So your views on Israel, let's get into foreign policy. Your
Sure.
views on Israel, what do you think, if you were president of the United States, what would your policy be towards Israel?
Well, first and foremost, absolutely stop funding and arming Israel to commit these atrocities. First of all, we should have no business funding foreign nations at all, and especially with military aid and arms. We've been sending arms to Israel on a daily basis, and that there's no red lines on what they can do with them. They've been able to do whatever they want, no red lines at all. We've made that perfectly clear. The State Department, the Defense Department has said there's no red lines on this. We're not going to police Israel and how they execute this war. And I think this has got to stop immediately. I would end all funding, and that includes the $3.8 billion that Israel gets annually from the United States, plus the $14.3 billion more they want to send now, plus all the arms that are being sent. Off the table, completely cut.
And what about Ukraine? What's your policy there?
Same thing. There's no discrimination on the basis of which nation we're dealing with. We should not be funding and arming this conflict. We should not be arming and funding Ukraine. And now they want to send another $100 billion over there, or something to that effect. Out of $108 billion, I think 74 or something like that is earmarked for Ukraine. And this is an outrage. First of all, the war is a complete sham. The whole thing was started on a false pretense, a false flag, and I think it's just ridiculous what we've done. They had a chance to negotiate early on. They'll end up with the same terms after hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have been killed and millions more displaced by this conflict. They could have stopped this long ago, 2 years ago. We have reports that they could have had negotiations, but now they're going to end up at the same terms. And this is crazy. This is just utterly outrageous, and it's got to stop. I would end it immediately.
Is there a time in your mind when we should be supportive of allies or we should be going to war?
I think only defensive wars should be fought. That is, when we're actually attacked, then we should defend ourselves against attacks, and we shouldn't look at other countries as appendages of ourselves. That's just ridiculous. That's part of the imperial project that the United States has been on for all these years, to see these other countries as part of their own of our nation when they're not. Israel is not a 51st state. Ukraine is not a 51st or 52nd state. These are not part of the United States. We have no business trying to defend them.
Yeah, you're right. They do. Our government does seem to treat them as states. Like, we are defending them. We must. We have to. It's our duty. And I'm curious if they would defend a state as fiercely as they're defending Ukraine and Israel at times. It's kind of questionable.
Really.
When it comes to especially like what's going on the southern border and whatnot.
Right.
There seems to be a blind eye turned to what's actually happening in our own country, and yet they're just so hyper focused on foreign. So that brings me to Yemen then, and China. Because China, you've got, people will say, well, but we've got the semiconductors on Taiwan, and we need those. That's part of our own national benefit. We need those semiconductors. Or Yemen, going through that strait is extremely important for shipping routes. And so we've got to be able to have those shipping routes. And Yemen, the Houthis are attacking the shipping routes. And really, originally, military was created and built up in order to protect merchant ships, right? That's like how the Navy was created. And so theoretically, we would be doing that if we were to be fighting the Houthis, let's say. So what is your stance on China and Yemen?
Yeah, I mean, we should not be funding Taiwan and with military aid or weapons at all. It is a provocation to China. And, semiconductors, look, when we say we need semiconductors, who needs semiconductors? Well, industries need semiconductors. It's up to them to get their semiconductors. There's no country that owns semiconductors. It's companies that own semiconductors. So you just get the development of semiconductors here, or you get it in other countries. Yeah. You don't fund a country, or we don't even what to call Taiwan. I mean, it considers itself independent. China considers itself one of the, part of the one China. But you don't intervene in those issues, because then you get situations like you have in the Red Sea with the Houthis. You're getting people ready to bomb ships, and we're moving a fleet there, which is just an outrage. And this stems, of course, from our involvement with the Israeli war. And our funding the Israeli war, everybody knows that we're complicit in all that happens there. And likewise, we've created enemies all over the Middle East and around the world because of it.
Yeah.
This is just not the way to conduct business. This is not what the country of the United States should be. We should be a beacon on the hill, yes, but not a beacon that's sending bombs. We should be a beacon of freedom and free trade and cooperation and international cooperation and even of course being a delegate to the world, but not being in charge of it. That's where our mistake is made.
The Taiwan issue is really interesting, because here we are sending them a bunch of, we want to send them a lot of weapons. We want to continue building industry there and continue investing in industry there. And China is sitting there saying to us, it's going to be ours. Now we're just going to give it all to China. So then China's going to have all of that we've built up in Taiwan. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense when China has asserted, listen, do what you want, but that's ours. And it's going to be ours. It's reuniting with us. And then we're going to have all that infrastructure you built up and all the weapons that you sent over there. That's going to be all ours. I mean, the ignorance of our leaders when it comes to foreign policy, just not being able to think ahead at all. They're just posturing to who? The defense contractors? I don't know who it is. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, right. It's very hard to tell all the players involved. I mean, the defense contractors are certainly part of it. The bankers are part of it. Without the Fed, without the Federal Reserve, and its ability to print or digitally produce money at the push of a button, we wouldn't be in these wars, because there would be no way to fund them. They're based on phony money in the first place, and that's what's keeping all this going. Yeah. So this ties back to the Fed and their unfettered production of currency, which has driven up, and that moves us into inflation. That's what's caused inflation, and that's why we're in such dire straits in terms of our domestic situation.
Yeah. So, okay, this is a tough one then. From a libertarian perspective, do you think we should have gotten involved in World War II?
Well, that's a hard one, Kim, because first of all, I think we shouldn't have gotten involved in World War I and let that come to a stalemate that it had arrived to, a stalemate. And it wasn't until the U.S. was lured into that war that it became a slaughter. And then following that was the imposition of all of these boycotts and so forth on Germany, which led to the rise of the Nazi Party and the whole shebang that followed, including the Holocaust, the whole 9 yards of nightmares. So I think it was our intervention in World War I that really precipitated the World War II intervention.
Yeah. So perhaps had we just not gotten involved at all in the beginning, then we wouldn't have had this, then World War II wouldn't have even happened. It wouldn't have been allowed to rise up and the Nazis to rise up and cause. So it's like the domino effect. Yeah, we could go and point at one instance like World War II, would we get involved? But had we just not gotten involved in World War I, World War II wouldn't have happened. And had we not, helped and done investments even with the Nazi Party, there was a lot of American investment early on in the 30s with the Nazis without, of course, nobody saw that it was going to end up where it did. But so very interesting. So there's a real hands-off approach. So really only defense of our own country. We should just be focusing on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I would pull, for example, we have troops in over 900 bases, maybe even more because some of them are secret. I would pull them all home and put some of them on our border, have them defend this country as opposed to, we don't have any self-defense. This is supposed to be military defense, but it isn't. It's strictly offense, really. It's supposed to be the Defense Department, but it's hardly a defense. Defense of us? No, it's not defending American citizens. It's not defending us. It's putting us in jeopardy thanks to their machinations around the world. So I would turn it into a real Defense Department, get rid of this military imperialism that we've been under, And let's see what happens, because it can't get any worse.
That's for sure. Well, and I mean, we're just crushing ourselves. It's the fall of an empire. It's exactly what
Yeah.
we've seen in the past with other empires. They just spread themselves too thin militarily, and that they focus on all of that. And the country itself goes into ruin while they're focused on every other
Ruin.
part of the world. And that's what's happening to us now. We're so focused on Israel, we're so focused on Ukraine and Taiwan that our own nation is falling apart. We have
Oh,
homelessness everywhere. The border crisis is insane right now. We've got just so much stuff going on. And who's paying attention to us? Because it certainly isn't our leaders.
not at all. You're absolutely correct. While the empire increases and expands like a bubble, really like a balloon that's ready to pop, the inside of the country, the infrastructure, the very culture and so forth are all disintegrating before our eyes. And this is just a travesty that has to stop. We've got to stop now.
Yeah. Well, and then you've got candidates like Nikki Haley who says she doesn't even want a Department of Defense. She wants a Department of Offense.
Absolutely. I mean,
she's
warmongers,
nuts. Yeah,
neocons galore out there. And I'm not
yeah,
sure there is any Republican candidate that isn't a neocon in some sense.
yeah,
And then you have RFK Jr., who has been just outrageous in his support of Israel and things that he has said.
yeah,
Like, for example, saying that the Palestinian people are the most pampered people in the history of the world.
yeah,
It's just stunning. Like, what
yeah.
is going on here? So you've got to look very close, because these people all harbor some neocon impulses.
As a libertarian, do you think that the United States government, our government, should have a military at all, or should it be all private?
Well, eventually, I'm for all privatization of everything.
Of
But
everything,
in the
even
interim, you got
cops,
to have
fire departments?
everything, yeah. But I mean, let's start from where we are. And that's, certainly none of this is going to happen overnight. We do need self-defense, and that includes like cyber defense and stuff like that. Yeah, you need defense. And until that becomes privatized, which it may never, I mean, this is an object, but never, it's kind of an asymptote that you may never reach. But in any case, I think we should aim for it. That's the object, because this gets us in the mindset to dismantle the excesses of this outrageous bureaucratic state, this deep state, or whatever you want to call it, that we're under, the largest state in the history of humanity. It needs to start being dismantled. But I do think you have to have defensive military until you have a fully private property society.
Well, the problem with the private is you end up with you end up with these like mercenary groups, like Prigozhin in Russia, right, where he was able to have this mercenary group that not only fought in Ukraine, but then was kind of tasking itself and really being hired by anybody to go and work anywhere in the world, anyone that would hire him. I mean, I think that would be the problem with having privatized. I mean, that's actually my problem right now with our privatized defense weapons, with Boeing and with Lockheed, is that they're able to sell those same weapons to foreign countries, and I don't think they should be able to do that. I think that American weapons should be for America, and that we should not be giving weapons or selling weapons or developing weapons for other countries. So that would be totally antithetical to, I think, private industry, because a private industry like Boeing should be allowed to sell to the United States and also to France.
Well, here's what's happening now is that the citizens are being robbed to pay these contractors money, Lockheed Martin and so forth. And then they use these weapons, the U.S. use these weapons however they deem fit. So they'll go around giving away weapons all over the place. And we're paying for it. So we're actually being robbed. So this is the collusion I'm talking about between the state and these private companies. That's what's happening. And if you didn't have that kind of collusion, you wouldn't have this kind of robbery that's going on. And I don't know theoretically where we would go if we had no governmental protection agencies like the military and so forth. But I think it's very possible that once you have a free private property society, people actually respect property rights, including the state, which is the most egregious violator of property rights that exists. I mean, you're basically being robbed at the point of a gun every day of your life. That's what's happening. That's when you get taxed. That's exactly what's taking place. So I think private property would be better because you wouldn't be robbed first of all. And then, you'd be able to afford things that you can't afford now. A lot of things. I think it would be a virtual cornucopia if we shrunk the state tremendously. Would be just unbelievable how much more wealth there would be.
Yeah, again, I'm interested in seeing it. I mean, I don't know if I buy it totally, but I'm interested in the experiment of it. In fact, I would love to see an experiment of it. I would love to see if there was a way to carve out like a city or
simulation,
right? Where they just try it out, like just complete no government interference on anything, and then see what happens in that city. I think it would be a really interesting experiment.